Consider this an opportunity to reset your travel priorities. Welcome to MojoTravels, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 underrated cities in Europe to visit after the pandemic. Are you a fan of our videos? Be sure to subscribe to MojoTravels and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. For this list, we'll be looking at some of the most overlooked and underappreciated cities from across Europe. Though the places we're discussing tend to play second fiddle to more tourist-centric cities, these destinations are a perfect place to start your post-pandemic travels. Number 10. Bergamo, Italy. This perpetually popular country attracts tourists by the millions. And despite Italy being among the places hit hardest by COVID-19, tourism is expected to make a full recovery. Translation: Rome, Florence, and Venice are likely to feel quite crowded quite soon. Bergamo, on the other hand, not so much. Located in the country's northern Lombardia region, it's long been overshadowed by Milan. But Bergamo boasts a wealth of history and culture in its own right. The walled old town Città Alta dates back to medieval times and is characterized by cobblestone streets and historic architecture. It's here that you'll find the city's best sights, including the Basilica di Santa Maria Maggiore. Bergamo's culinary scene also does Italy proud. Backed by the Alps, which add to the country's picturesque qualities, Bergamo is also notably modern. The lower city, Città Bassa, wonderfully contrasts the historic district with modern, trendy businesses and shops. Number 9. Riga, Latvia. As the nation's capital, Riga attracts more international visitors than any other city or region in Latvia. But it being the country's top destination doesn't make it any less underrated. 2018 was a record year for the city with 3.5 million visitors. That's more than double the numbers than it did just 2 years earlier, but still relatively modest compared to many European capitals. In short, Riga is a city on the rise, but one that you still have time to visit before it goes from underrated to on trend. A shockingly beautiful city that begs to be photographed, if not painted, Riga is characterized by narrow winding streets, Gothic spires, and brightly colored Art Nouveau buildings, of which Riga is said to have the most in the world. From the central market and the city's countless boutiques to the National Museum of Arts and Riga Cathedral, this is a destination with much to offer. Number 8. Lille, France. Like Italy, France is one of Europe's most consistently popular destinations. Many a traveler has gone to Paris fueled by fantasies of romance, great food, and a quintessential Parisian lifestyle, only to have their hopes dashed by a pervasive feeling of being unwelcome. But can you really blame the locals? They weather tens of millions of visitors each year. So why not buck the trend and move beyond the country's oversaturated capital? Forgetting specific major attractions like the Arc de Triomphe, Louvre, and Eiffel Tower, Lille checks all the same boxes as Paris. It's a city of art, culture, history, architecture, cuisine, and more. Given that a large percentage of residents are students, the entire city has a youthful vibrance to it that bleeds into everything from the nightlife and shopping to cafe culture and the food scene. To extend your alternative French holiday with something a little different, the historic town of Vézelay is another great underrated destination. Number 7. Ghent, Belgium. When we say Belgium, your mind almost immediately goes to the two B's, Bruges and Brussels. Unfortunately, that's you and everyone else who's considering taking a trip to Belgium. In the spirit of underrated, overlooked, and underappreciated European destinations, we're instead recommending a trip to Ghent. Offering a similar fairy tale atmosphere as Bruges, but with a fraction of the tourists, Belgium's third largest city is just small enough to feel intimate, and yet large enough to check the various boxes that one looks for in a well-rounded city trip. Architectural and historic highlights include St. Bavo Cathedral, Gravenstein Castle, and the Museum of Fine Arts. The riverside is among the city's most popular areas and is especially beautiful when illuminated at night. Of course, if you don't mind crowds and are looking to experience Ghent at its most vibrant, consider visiting during the annual Ghent Festival. Number 6. Basel, Switzerland. Never heard of it? Don't worry, you're not alone in that regard. Though it may be the country's third most populated city, at just about 180,000 residents, it's not exactly a metropolis. But honestly, Basel might realistically boast the most culture per capita anywhere in Europe. In fact, it's thought to have the most museums per capita, with dozens of them to choose from. And being on the border of Germany and France, Basel is also unique in its multicultural identity. The city is a compelling blend that borrows liberally from its neighbors. The architecture in particular feels world-class. Now, Basel is by no means a budget destination. Switzerland is, after all, among the most expensive countries in the world. That being said, relative to Zurich and Geneva, Basel definitely makes for a bit more of a cost-efficient way to experience everything Switzerland has to offer. Peaceful and picturesque, Basel is a must-visit. Number 5. Innsbruck, Austria. One glimpse of this city and you'll be looking into flights. With its colorful waterfront buildings, Innsbruck looks like something out of a Wes Anderson movie. Or maybe that's the setting of a story that the director simply hasn't told yet. But really, it's the contrast between these structures and the snow-capped mountains that soar behind it that makes Innsbruck feel so downright surreal. And that's at the heart of Innsbruck's appeal, its duality. The city is rich in historic architecture and Austrian culture, but it's also an ideal launchpad for outdoor activities in the surrounding landscape. Having twice hosted the Olympic Games in the 1960s and 70s, Innsbruck is no stranger to large crowds. It also served as the site of the Paralympics in '84 and '88, as well as the Winter Youth Olympics in 2012. Outside of major events, however, this picturesque city, with its population of just over 132,000, remains relatively uncrowded and underappreciated most of the year. Number 4. Belgrade, Serbia. If you remember the horrors of the Balkans in the 90s, chances are that Serbia doesn't rank very highly on your travel bucket list. But in 2021, the Serbian capital of Belgrade may just become one of your new favorite destinations. It might lack the carefully manicured architecture of many other cities on our list today, but Belgrade's rich history can be seen and felt around every corner. Its roots reach all the way back to its initial establishment around 279 BCE, and its patchwork skyline is a testament to its storied past. As you walk the city's bustling pedestrian boulevards, you'll come across countless hidden gems, and be able to explore everything from coffee houses and clubs to museums and the Belgrade Fortress. Modern Belgrade boasts some of Europe's most exciting under-the-radar nightlife. Set at the junction of the Danube and Sava rivers, the waterfront is a big part of Belgrade's appeal. You haven't lived until you visited the floating river lounges that number in the hundreds. Number 3. Ronda Spain. Before the pandemic, there were few countries suffering from over-tourism more acutely than Spain. It had gotten so bad that in recent years, the people of Barcelona were actively discouraging tourists from coming to their city. Thankfully, those wanting to immerse themselves in Spanish culture can still do so, while respecting the wants and needs of Barcelona's understandably frustrated residents. Located in the autonomous southern region of Andalusia, Ronda is a stunning city divided into a new and old town by a towering gorge. While there's a distinct lack of conventional tourist sites, ruins of Neolithic settlements can be found around the city, and the architecture and overall atmosphere of the old town is an attraction in its own right. For those interested in embarking on an entire alternative tour of Spain, consider adding other underrated gems to your itinerary, including Santiago de Compostela, Girona, Carmona, Salamanca, and Huesca. Number 2. Valletta Malta. When people toy with the idea of taking a Mediterranean vacation, there are a few destinations that immediately come to mind, namely Italy, Greece, and more recently, Croatia. All are indeed picturesque escapes, but equally, unless you avoid the major population centers, tend to suffer from over-tourism. In Malta, however, you can visit the capital city of Valletta and still feel like you're exploring relatively uncharted territory, from the perspective of international travel, that is. The tiny island nation, which encompasses just 122 square miles of land, receives about 1.6 million travelers per year, which means it can get a little crowded at peak season, but remains far from being overdone. The capital, Valletta, is one big UNESCO World Heritage Site, and because of its relatively small size, it can easily be explored on foot. With its many gardens, churches, Baroque palaces, piazzas, and the city's historic fortifications, the city feels like one big living museum. Furthermore, as a result of its long and complex history, Malta draws influence from a number of neighboring cultures, making it feel like the ultimate concentrated Mediterranean experience with a local twist. Number 1. Maastricht, Netherlands. The Netherlands, at last count, receives roughly 20 million visitors a year. The unfortunate thing, both for locals and travelers alike, is that a massive percentage of tourists treat the country like a single city destination, never moving beyond Amsterdam. And those crowds can significantly detract from the experience. Maastricht, on the other hand, remains almost entirely off the radar despite meeting much of the same criteria. Vrethof and the Market are your quintessential European town squares, lined with restaurants and bars. Architectural and historic sites abound, like the Basilica of St. Servatius and various remnants of the old city fortifications, including Fort St. Peter. While Maastricht might not have Amsterdam's elaborate canals, the Meuse River does scratch a similar itch. Maastricht is rich in history and culture, but being a university city, it's also vibrant and modern where it counts, with trendy bars, progressive values, and an international culinary scene. Happy travels! Check out this other recent clip from MojoTravels, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.